Rest isn't a luxury, it's a necessity.
And if you don't rest voluntarily, your body will make you eventually.
Welcome to Rebel Mind, a new series from Rebel EM, where MIND stands for Mastering Internal Negativity During Difficulty. In this space, we are focused on wellness, productivity, provider performance, and team optimization, so you can be at your best at home or on shift when making difficult decisions under pressure. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Ramsey, and I'm thrilled to discuss a topic that every clinician needs to understand: rest, and why it's not the same as sleep. Joining me today are two friends and colleagues who bring humor, insight, and lived experience to this conversation. Dr. Marie Nayed is an assistant professor of emergency medicine at the NYU Grossman Long Island School of Medicine. She hails from residency at St. Barnabas in the Bronx and has been at her current shop ever since 2013. Currently, she serves as core faculty and wellness coordinator for the residency and has been a nocturnist for several years, which has since piqued her interest in wellness. She also serves on the board of Kula for Karma, a non-for-profit focused on mental health for underserved communities.
I'm glad to be here, Mark. Thanks for having us. This is such a needed topic in our space.
We're really happy to have you. Dr. Emil Badula is an assistant professor of emergency medicine, the NYU Grossman Long Island School of Medicine, the EM clerkship director, and runs the Goat Cow. He is a longtime nerd, and that's nighttime ER doc, working exclusively nights for the past 10 plus years. He's a true New Yorker, born in Brooklyn, lived in Queens, and trained in the Bronx at St. Barnabas.
Hey, thanks for having us, Mark. We're happy to talk about this topic. But what'd you say? The rest is not the same as sleep? You mean I've been getting this wrong for years? I guess it's time for me to learn how to do it right now.
Yeah, we're going to straighten all of that out, and let's jump right into it. So we've all heard the term, just get some rest. But what does that actually mean? Spoiler, it doesn't mean just sleep. Maureen, break this down for us, please.
All right, you got it. So, sleep is biological, it's essential, but it's only one form of recovery, and it's definitely not the same thing as rest. Rest is intentional, it's multifaceted, and it's active. I mean, you can get sleep for 8 hours and still feel depleted. We've all done it because what you needed wasn't sleep, it was rest and in a different dimension.
So what you're saying is no matter how long I nap on the couch and scrubs one shoe on, that's not cutting it.
Unfortunately not. You might be unconscious, but not necessarily rested. And let's talk about why rest feels so elusive, especially for us healthcare providers.
Yeah, this is actually my favorite question because why is it even a question, right? It's really on us. We have this cultural obsession with doing, and rest is seemingly unproductive and lazy, right? We get praised for running on fumes, and all of this is basically just a bunch of misconceptions that we put on ourselves. You add in then some thought intrusions, guilt, family obligations, and rest becomes this elusive, almost a guilty luxury.
Yeah, rest is unproductive, really. If you're not tired, you must not be working hard enough. Rest becomes this thing that you have to earn, right?
Yeah, and that's part of the shift we want to create, right? Rest isn't a reward, it's a requirement. You don't have to earn it, you deserve it, just like hydration or oxygen or civility in the trauma bay, right?
Well, that's a hard one, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I know, but it is a requirement. So let's introduce a framework and let's talk about the 7 types of rest. Let's get into the framework that's helped make sense of this. The 7 types of rest, a concept developed by internist Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith, author of Sacred Rest. It's gained traction across wellness and psychology circles, and for good reason.
absolutely. So thanks to Dr. Dalton Smith, this is widespread, but it's always been known that there is a multidimensional aspect or concept of rest. This model is a game changer, right? These 7 types are physical, mental, sensory, creative, emotional, social, and spiritual. And each one targets a specific kind of exhaustion, and they all require different kinds of input and recovery.
So it's a matter of where my fatigue is living right now. Because what you're saying is that if I have a mental drain, a physical rest won't work. then if I have a physical drain, I need a physical rest.
Yeah,
and a mental drain, a mental rest.
yeah, and you both have given phenomenal talks before at conferences like AEM on one of these, which is sensory rest. And let's unpack that one a bit.
Right. So sensory rest is one of my favorites to talk about with ER physicians because we are undoubtedly the most overstimulated profession in medicine, right? Think of all that's going on in the ER, right? Alarms, monitors, pages, fluorescent lighting, interruptions, EKGs in your face. It's nonstop.
And don't forget the smells. Definitely the smells.
Oh, yeah.
We can make a
Smells.
diagnosis based on the smell.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, no, you both are absolutely correct. I mean, it's overstimulation to the max. In fact, kind of like a short, fun story is I one time walked my sister who's not in medicine. She's in the humanities, a professor of music. And I walked her through the emergency department once, and she just like was starting to get really anxious from all of the sounds as a musician, all of the sounds and all of the noises that were being heard.
Yeah, Mark, I just had a similar experience with my own sister. We just went on a cruise, and she is a consultant for internal auditing, and she works from home. And essentially, she couldn't possibly tolerate the number of people and the amount of stimulation while on the ship. It was too much for her. She couldn't work through the crowds. And for me, it's, the same as being in the ER, except someone's not peeing in the corner of the floor. So
Exactly.
it's so the stimulation we undergo and what we tolerate is so different than the general population, the civilians.
I've often thought about creating a soundtrack called the Sounds of the ER. I know they have like whale sounds and ocean sounds to help you go to sleep.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what I'll be
That would
using
be
it for. But
Like actual torture.
Well, I mean, or some people might use it as, I don't know, white noise somewhere. God forbid. I don't know.
and we all learn to ignore those sounds, right?
Right, exactly. And then we wonder why we feel tired at the end of the day, right? But the sensory rest means detoxing from all of that, right? Intentionally closing your eyes, getting outside, lowering the volume, removing visual clutter. It's that part is obviously not about sleep. It's really about resetting your sensory load.
So I shouldn't be scrolling through TikTok, blasting my eyes with blue light in bed while watching the Mets game and eating peanut butter M&Ms.
Yeah, but Dula, that's the sensory equivalent of like playing Jenga during a hurricane.
Yeah, the Mets probably gonna lose anyway.
You should watch the Bill Dead then.
There you go. The Bills. Heck yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. All right. So let's talk about what makes rest effective and go a little deeper into, I guess, really what makes any form of rest actually restorative. Can you give us some key points or take home principles?
Absolutely. So some take-home principles really that go across all the types of rest we're discussing. One is rest is multifaceted, and it's obviously multiple forms. It's productive. It absolutely improves your performance, your decision-making, your empathy. It makes you a better person, a better doctor. It's intentional. So that means you have to make a real plan. It requires some thoughtful engagement. It's not an autopilot situation. It's layered. It's easy to talk about that with sensory rest and the idea of all five senses being used. It's layered, which, we can use sensory rest as an example because it's easy, right? Five senses. So you can use all five senses to gain sensory rest, but it's layered in the sense that you can do an activity that might give you physical and mental rest because you have to concentrate so hard to do it. Also, it's about the input and the detox. So visually speaking, that's an easy one. You might want to close your eyes to give some form of sensory rest, but you may also want to go outside and take in the view of nature. And that also creates a good example of what that rest can look like. And it's personal. So what works for me is not going to work for you necessarily. What recharges me might be a stressor for someone else. And it's deserved, not earned, right? That is the final point. It's a big deal. You do not have to earn rest. You absolutely deserve it. All of humanity deserves rest. So definitely as ER physicians, I think we have to remember that we are also human.
Yeah, that last one deserves repeating. The rest is deserved, not earned. It's important to get that in your mind at home or on a shift. It's as important as vasopressor dosing or vent settings. Maybe that deserves a spot on your badge reel as well. Rest is deserved, not earned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to kind of add a little bit more about rest is layered when you were talking about that, Marine. There's a term in medical education that we use called scaffolding, and that's when you kind of put on other things that you've learned on top of new information that you're bringing in hopes of building a deeper learning base and deeper way of remembering things. And I feel like that's how it is with rest, right? As you add new ways to remove sensory intake, you're getting more rest. And it's all about that input and that detox, like you were mentioning. But absolutely, I agree with both of you, and that rest is for sure deserved and not earned. Let's give listeners a taste of the other 6 rest types so that they can start identifying what they might be missing. And let's do it in quick fire style, Marie.
Absolutely. So the first one being physical rest. So we all know passive rest like sleeping, but active rest like stretching or gentle movement, massage, even exercising throughout the day can fall into this category. Mental rest is reducing decision fatigue. Tools like brain dumping, meditation, or taking real breaks during work. For me, nothing makes me happier than a tasting menu or an omakase menu where I have to make no choices. Thank you very much. Okay. Creative rest. So that's just, reconnecting with awe, like nature, art, music, things that refill your inspiration tank. I know, Amelie, you gave like a great talk at one of these conferences. I think it was SAAM about better breaks. And I think that included some mandala art. You don't have to be an artist to use a creative break,
Use a different mindset for a little bit there. Yeah, reset your creativity and your thought process.
right? When we talk about emotional rest, so that's being around people you don't have to perform for, saying I'm not okay, but it's spaces and people where you can be your authentic self and be at peace and not have any further worry. Social rest is taking space from draining interactions, right? So spending time with people who fill up your cup, don't drain your cup. This is something that people desire, obviously, in general, but it's important to have these decided interactions. And lastly, spiritual rest. And this looks different for everybody, no doubt about it. But the idea is a connection to something bigger than yourself, a greater purpose that can look like faith, community, it can be reflection, prayer, meditation.
Yeah, if you're feeling drained in a way that sleep doesn't fix, this list is your diagnostic tool. If I could say on mental rest, reducing decision fatigue, us in the emergency department, decision making is our job. In emergency medicine, we make some of the most weighted decisions with the least amount of information. The only data point we have maybe is the patient in front of us, and we have to decide what to do on a constant basis. Taking a rest from decision making, that's my vacation.
Okay. And to quote Dr. Marco Propersi, we don't have Mickey Mouse jobs. Like that heaviness and the cognitive burden. Sometimes I try to explain that to, learners, trainees, residents, students, mid-levels, anyone adjunctive, that, sometimes they think you're kind of standing still or not doing anything, but the cognitive circulation that's going on in the brain is very, very heavy. It's very burdensome sometimes.
The wheels are in motion.
Mhm.
Yeah. And one way I wanted to connect back to emotional rest was being around people you don't have to perform for. Spouses and significant others are great for this because when the simple question of, hey, what do you want to do for dinner? That can sometimes be a trigger to be like, oh my God, another decision I have to make. And it's really just, somebody else wanting to spend time with you in a very meaningful way and connect with you. And so a lot of times when my wife asks me that, I literally say, I don't care. I don't even want to make that as a decision either. And she's totally understandable. She knows where that's coming from because of a long day of having to make decisions in the ER or the ICU. So I just want to emphasize that.
Absolutely. Going back into physical rest and or layering some of these aspects, one thing I know is my son, he's only 4, God bless. He's a crazy 4-year-old. And the idea of putting him into martial arts, came across the table and we did. And what I love about that is he does have to learn how to focus and listen to, do whatever the routine is. And I remember taking some of those classes in the past and feeling my best, not because the activity was so satisfying, but because I couldn't think about anything during that 1 hour period because I had to follow the steps in the routine. And that is absolutely the only thing that could be in my mind. So not only was it a form of physical rest, it was a form of mental rest.
A 4-year-old in martial arts is something I can totally relate to, having my 3 boys, one of which was in that very same situation, actually. And believe it or not, he was in a pretty way higher intensity class than we had expected to put him in. And it was one where he would get so nervous and anxious to perform that he would come back far more dysregulated than he went in. And I was like, what is going on? That's the whole point of this, is discipline and teaching him those habits. And when you're just in a not good environment, you start to do wild things. And it does take some, adjustment and some adaptation, if you will. But when you have tried a lot of many different things and you're still not sitting in that environment, it's important to either remove yourself from that situation or continue to surround yourself with support groups that allow you to perform as well as you can. And I think that totally relates to us as ER docs and ICU docs because, yeah, sure, we're not 4-year-olds taking martial art classes, but we're certainly in different environments having to adapt every day, sometimes every hour, and almost every shift for sure.
Yeah, I can relate that with us in the emergency department and related to the better breaks you mentioned also, Maureen. Sometimes you have a difficult or an adversarial conversation with the patient, and that really gets your epinephrine going, and you can't take it out on the patient. So that will be a good time to take a break, maybe get a mental rest, and put some of that physical unrest to work. Find a back office somewhere, drop and do 10 push-ups, put that energy to work and get it out of your system before returning to your shift and being more at ease, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I distinctly remember in residency, I was on an overnight shift and I kept trying to wake a patient up who was clearly just sleeping in our emergency department, but he was there for chest pain. And he was a very tall gentleman and far more of a frequent utilizer of the gym than myself. And I kept waking him up, and he then finally stood up in a very intimidating manner and started walking towards me aggressively. And at that point, I was an intern, and I slowly kept backing away and was like, oh my God, I'm probably going to get the crap beaten out of me. And thankfully, security was right there. There was actually prison police 2 hallways down or 2 curtains down. And immediately the situation got diffused. But psychologically speaking, I was totally thrown for a loop. And I went to my attending and he literally just said, walk it off or go outside or something. And it was not an empathetic or helpful situation at all. But I did go outside and I was able to refresh or kind of get that form of rest just from taking a break and being outside. So that cannot be underestimated or understated for sure. So let's jump into some final thoughts. I mean, so many of us are walking around exhausted, and not from lack of sleep, but from lack of rest in the areas that matter most.
Yeah. And what makes rest different, it doesn't just happen. And you really have to recognize the deficit and choose the right intervention. I also want to say a lot of times when we offer these kind of talks, I mean, they're so helpful to share because it's just a refresh for my own personal wellness. And I want to tell people to be really specific, try to make a plan that is specific for you. Don't just say, I'm going to rest, I'm going to get some exercise. Try to make a specific plan that you can really refer to and rely on. That tool bank is so important.
And maybe give yourself permission to rest, even when there are dishes in the sink and unread emails in your inbox. It's okay. We all need it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. That's it right there. I mean, your rest is not a reward for finishing everything. It's a resource that helps you finish anything well. Thank you both for joining me on today's episode.
And remember, rest isn't a luxury, it's a necessity.
And if you don't rest voluntarily, your body will make you eventually.
That's it for this episode of Rebel Mind. In the next episode, we'll dive into sleep hygiene and mindset. Subscribe, share, and stay tuned as we dive deeper into practical ways to care for ourselves so we can show up and take care of others. Take care.